Hi team, Marty the OT guy here. Welcome to episode 3. I'd like to start off with a bit of a shout out actually. I've had a lot of feedback from work colleagues, from customers, from our partners who viewed the previous episodes. And it's a bit humbling actually what people are saying. They're finding this really useful, and to be honest, I never would have expected that. So look, to everybody out there, thanks very much, and let's see what we can do here. The other thing I'd like to do before we get too deeply into it is just share a bit of a story about how this came about, because this wasn't my idea. If you know me, I'm not generally the sort of guy who would sit in front of a camera and tell these kind of things. It's not really my style, but we used to have a chap working with us. His name was Vincent Liu, and Vincent was up in Singapore, and he asked me if I could create a series of short videos to help his customers understand what it's like being an OT guy. So we planned this out and we came up with this idea, and then I heard that Vincent was ill, and then I heard that Vincent was on medical leave, and I sort of never really heard any more. And then unfortunately, sometime later, I heard that Vincent had passed away, it was really sad. And I just wanted to take a moment to shout out that all of this whole idea was Vincent's idea. And it's a shame he's not here to see it with us. But anyway, moving on. Today's topic is content packs. So content packs came out in Nozomi Networks Guardian firmware version 22.0. And content packs are a way of bundling up queries and reports. And as we continue on developing other features, more things are being added into the content packs. But they're a way of bundling these things up and moving them around Guardians or other appliances that you have in your environment. Very, very useful. Really, it's a great feature. And I know from when I was a customer and we deployed a dozen Guardians, there was a lot of copy and paste and notepad and things like that to get queries and reports from one Guardian to the next. It was frustrating at times. So now we have content packs. We don't have to do that. We will go through and do a lab demo, but it'd be cruel and it'd be wrong if we didn't have a bit of a story along the way. So about 10 years ago, I was involved in a project to upgrade the control systems in a scientific experimental wood pulping plant, which is here in New Zealand. And actually, it's sort of that way. And this was the first project that anyone knew of where a Bailey 90 DCS had been swapped out for Rockwell Allen Bradley control logics. As far as we were aware, and I'm pretty sure, if memory serves me correctly, Rockwell confirmed it at the time, that it was the first project of this type in the Asia Pacific region. So we built this quite large control system. Even though it's an experimental pulp plant, they crammed a lot of things into a very small space. And nature of the operation was that the scientists who used the plant would often reconfigure it between experiments. So where you may have one piping and instrumentation configuration for this experiment, when they come to do the next one, they could change the piping, swap out what instruments were in, they would rewrite the code to suit themselves, and sometimes alter the HMI and things as well. So it was a really interesting project. And although the core of the story is not cybersecurity related, it is production security related, and it's also the one time in my career I've had this particular experience. So we get to installation and we roll up to site. I think we went in on a Thursday or a Friday, and we started the installation. We'd already pulled out the old DCS cabinets and we put in the new switchboards, and we ran all the cables up from underneath, and we got out the expanding foam and sealed up all the cable entries. And we went, okay, 4 o'clock on Friday, we're out of here. So we bugged out for the weekend, and I come back to site on the Monday morning, and you walk into the control room and go, that's a funny smell. I don't like that smell. And when we opened the control panels, the smell got stronger. Why, man, what is that? And one of the staff came in and he goes, oh, yep, that's rats, man. You've had rats in there. We're like, what? How do you get rats in here? So we've got a control panel that was double-sided. If we'd built it side by side, it would have been 6 meters long. So it was 3 meters long, sort of 2.4 high, and back to back. And it had in it was a single PLC rack, the single Control Logics rack, but we had, I think it was 9 Flex Logics expansion racks. So there's a lot of I/O in there. And we opened the cabinets and we started looking, and sure enough, on the top of the PLC, where it was nice and warm, because that's the way electrical cabinets work and heat rises, so it was nice and warm. The rats had been nesting up on top of the PLC. Rats, like humans, they have byproducts of biological processes, and the evidence of the byproducts had filtered down through the PLC rack and caused many things to go pop and bang. The other thing we didn't know was, as we started pulling the ducting covers off, in there were miles of connection cabling. You guys will have seen, you've seen photos or you've worked on panels. Yeah, you pull the ducting off and they're packed full of individual cores. We found out that day that rats like eating insulation on wiring. So instead of having kilometres of insulated cable, we now had kilometres of bare copper. So at this point, of course, we turned the power off. First thing we did was someone said, oh, you didn't block up the cable ways, so they got in that way. So we looked and we checked, and apparently rats like eating expanding foam as well. And we said, okay, we can't go any further. This is almost a total rebuild. So I sort of went, man, how many rats have you got in this place? How many rats does it take to cause this much damage over a 3-day weekend? And that was one of the staff members. That was when the staff member said to me, goes, oh, yeah, let me show you. And he took me down into the production plant where there's these 300 millimeter or 1 foot by 4 inch cable ducts, metal cable ducts, and they run all around every floor and up, down, all over the place. And he picked up a broom. And before I tell you what he did with the broom, let's do the lab demo. And you're going to call me a big sellout, like a radio, some sort of disc jockey radio announcer, because we'll finish the story at the end of this. Okay, so welcome to my lab. Here's one of my Guardians. You can see it's got a bit of content in it. We jump across here to queries, saved queries, and you see I've got a bunch of queries here that build out a business report that helps me know how customers use their Guardians. If I jump over to reports here, you'll see there's a template which I use for that report. If you want to know more about the report, sing out, we'll hand it out to our customers. I need to get this to a new Guardian that I've built. So we have to export the content pack. We go administration, system, export. Now I could just export everything, all the reports and queries, but I don't want to do that. I actually just want my business report queries and report template. So I select those, hit the export button, it assigns a file name, export, bang, done. Dead simple. Change over to my VMware, my VM instance, ESX. This is where I built my virtual Guardian for this lab. It's very small, there's nothing special about it. Change to that new Guardian. And here is, you can see there's not a lot of assets or environment that it's seeing. It's pretty new. And you'll see that there's no queries, we've got no saved queries, and I've got no report templates. Nothing there. So we need to bring in that content pack. Administration, system, import. Make sure you select the correct file type or the correct import type. Click on the box, select the file you need. Bang, done. Let's check our queries and reports. There's my queries, not populating yet, there's not enough data. And There's my report template, ready to go. All right, so that's the lab out of the way. So back to the story. We're standing on the production floor of this wood pulping plant, and the guy's got the broom, so he picks it up and he's holding the broom by the handle with the head up in the air, and he hits the cable tray with the broom. This bang! And you just hear the sound of thousands of feet running on metal throughout the whole building. Came alive. It was just the scuttle of feet. I can't even imitate the noise or think of what it was. So it probably sounds like throwing probably 6 marbles into a metal tin and shaking it about would be the closest. It is just noise everywhere. And we sort of stood there and went, we probably should do something about this before we go too much further. Because in this particular case, we had, I think it was $250,000 worth of automation equipment, which was heading to the scrap bin now. Strangely enough, rat urine is not covered under warranty. So we had all this gear heading to the scrap bin. I had to bring my switchboard builders on site to rebuild the switchboard. And that took a little while. So while the rebuild was happening, which I can't remember exactly, I think it was 2 to 3 weeks delay we had while this rebuild was done. They brought in the exterminators and they laid out traps and bait and things, and they just caught hundreds. There were hundreds of rats were caught. And and hundreds more got away, I suppose. And anyway, we get to the end of it and we're commissioning the plant and everything's ready to go. Now, in a wood pulping plant, if you've never been there, the actual pulp, you take the wood chips and you run them through processes of steam and temperature and pressure and things to make it soft. And then it goes between 2 grinding discs, which rotate. One is stationary, of course, and one rotates. And they vary the gap between the disc to grind the timber into the pulp. The chips, rather, into the pulp. So the motor hanging off the end of the rotating bit is 11,000 volt, 1 megawatt motor. It's a good size for a small experimental plant. You can imagine it'd be so much bigger on a live plant, on a real one. And we're talking about gaps, moving gaps and controlling the distance between these plates down in thousandths of an inch. So we go to start this up and we're sitting in front of the HMI and the man clicks the big red button and silence. Nothing. It's like, well, that's interesting. We've got all this timber there. It's been through its pressure and temperature cycles. It's ready to be pulped and we can't spin the pulping disc. 0800 electrician. Electrician comes around, he goes, yep, the 11 kV, 11,000 volt supply is blown. Okay. Shut everything down. The funniest part about it was I get a phone call about 30 minutes later and the Sparky rings me and he goes, Marty, you've got to come and see this. So we get down there and he's got this 11,000 volt switch pulled apart. And he said, it's a blown fuse. So, okay. He says, but you've got to see this. It was the final act of defiance by the rats. And inside this fuse, on one end of the fuse was 1 foot. And on the sidewall of the switch was another foot. And at the bottom of the cabinet was a pile of bones and fur and things. And this one rat had managed to stick 2 feet in the wrong place and vaporized himself. And it was sort of the last great up yours from the rats as we worked on the project. So once we replaced that fuse and got everything going again, the project was a raging success, and it was one of my favourites to work on. It's not often you get given 300 sheets of good-sized paper with function block diagrams written on it in a language for an older control system, and you're asked to convert that across. And there was no automation we could use to do that. It had to be done manually. It was a fantastic exercise. It was a great project and one that I was quite proud of. So that brings us to the end of this episode. I hope you found it interesting. I hope that you will use content packs and that they will make your life easier. If you would like to get a copy of the queries and the report, if you're a Nozomi customer and you want a copy of the queries and the report that I showed in the lab demo, let me know or contact your account executive. They'll get in touch with me. We'll get it across to you. And if you need help, I'm more than happy to jump on a call with you and help you to install that and get it working for you. In the meantime, this is coming out in December, so if you're part of the world like I am, where the holidays are coming up, Christmas time, and you're having a break, then I hope you have a safe one. I hope you enjoy yourself. I hope you spend time with family, and I'll look forward to seeing you next year when we'll try to keep this interesting. Thanks very much. See you next time.